So if you're wondering, yes, I am wearing the same t-shirt as I was in the last video. I don't even know what day of the week it is. I'm not sure if you guys feel the same. This whole quarantine thing has completely disrupted my schedule. This is not beer, by the way. This is just Canada Dry Ginger Ale. So YouTube moderators, if you're watching, don't kill me. Anyway, so in today's video, I want to talk about some common criticisms of FIRE. When I talk to people and I explain to them why I want to retire by 35 and achieve financial independence, I'm usually met with a mixture of disbelief, or some people even, I don't know, take offense to it, or they're sort of outraged by it. It's like, how dare you think that you can retire by 35 or 40, or they just don't believe me, right? So they think that, oh, you're just a young 20-something-year-old kid and you don't know anything. And part of that might be true. I mean, it's not completely uncalled for. I mean, I am only 24 years old, so maybe there's a lot of things in life that other people have experienced that I have not. But I think that from my standpoint, a lot of people don't manage their finances properly, and they don't spend the time to research investments and plan for their future. So I think that that's a major stumbling block on a lot of people's lives that's preventing them from achieving financial independence, never mind by 35 or 40 years old. Some people don't achieve financial independence ever. So I think that that's sort of a shame, and I want to kind of give my arguments against some of the common criticisms that people have against FIRE, and explain to you why I don't think that FIRE is impossible. So I do think that FIRE is possible. That double negative kind of messes me up. So yeah, I want to explain to you why I think that FIRE is something that is possible and what I'm doing to achieve that by 35 years old. But before I jump into the meat and potatoes of this video, you guys know what time it is? That's right, quarantine memes. Let's go. Anyways, hope you guys like that. So without further ado, let's jump in. So number one criticism that I hear is smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. No, but seriously, smash that like button. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm and it helps the channel grow. In all seriousness though, the first criticism that I hear from people is I'm giving up too much. And this could mean that they're giving up coffee, for example, or they're canceling their Netflix subscription, or whatever those like small little sacrifices that don't seem to matter a lot. But, if you cut out coffee completely, let's say you spend $3 on coffee every day and you cut it out completely and now you're just miserable because you need your coffee, right? Or it could be even bigger things. I mean, some people, as I mentioned, a lot of my friends, they mod cars, right? That's their biggest hobby. So if they get, let's say, $1,000 from the government, let's say throughout this whole crisis that we're experiencing, the government's giving everyone stimulus money, right? So some people, they might get like $1,000 or $2,000 from the government and they go, oh, what do I do with this money? They just spend it on their cars. And when I tell people, oh, you should be investing and all this stuff, they're like, I don't want to invest. I want to spend money on my cars because that's what I love, right? So I've already touched upon this briefly in another video. I forget exactly which one it was, but I think what I have to say to this is it's always about what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're getting back. So if you think about it, financial independence is something that's not easy to achieve, right? So I fully admit that it's a very hard goal to achieve. And face it, most people in their lifetime, they probably won't achieve it. But the thing that you want to keep in mind is you gotta have to make some sacrifices at some point, right? So if you think about it, if cutting down your coffee every day and you investing the money will actually contribute to a difference in terms of letting you become financially independent earlier and retiring earlier, then maybe not having that coffee is worth it. But if you think that, I gotta have this coffee every morning. If I don't have this coffee, I'm gonna suffer such a mental health breakdown that I'm not going to be able to function as normal for the rest of the day, and it's just going to completely ruin my life. And if that's you, then by all means keep on buying the coffee, right? I don't want you to have a mental breakdown. It's always a trade-off, right? So I think that nowadays that we're all locked down, people are not going to concerts anymore, right? You're not going to restaurants, you're not hanging out with your friends, and you're probably spending a lot less money now than you were just a few months ago. So it gives you a taste of what it's like to maybe have to save up money and say no to friends and say no to all these social events and say no to spending money and just saving this money, right? So, I mean, I suggest that now that you are forced to save the money, maybe you could look into investing and you'll see what it's actually like to have to put away some money for fire. And maybe you win the lottery and you just get like $10 million from the lottery, but that your chances of winning the lottery is pretty astronomical. So aside from money windfalls like winning the lottery or having a huge inheritance put upon you by like a Nigerian prince or something, you probably won't achieve fire just accidentally, right? You won't just wander upon financial independence. You got to actually work for it and you got to actually sacrifice some things to get to it. So yeah, that essentially sums up my counter argument number one, which is you got to sacrifice something, right? You can't just continue the way that you usually do and be exactly like everyone else and hope to achieve financial independence. You got to do something that not everyone else is doing because most people don't achieve financial independence. So that's number one. And the number two argument against fire is that I'll never be able to save enough money to actually achieve financial independence. And to that argument, I have to say, you're right. You won't be able to save enough to achieve financial independence if you're not investing. So remember what I said about investing. You make that 8 to 10% in an index fund, and if you're good, you can make up to 15% or perhaps even more. So you got to aim for that 15% or around there if you actually want to achieve financial independence. So for example, let's do some quick maths. Now, this is not anything complicated. Don't click away from the video. I promise this will be simple to understand, right? So say if you put in $2,500 a month into your savings account each month, and you do that for 15 years. Let's say you want to retire in 15 years. In a savings account, let's say you earn about 2% in a high interest savings account. So you just have that money rolling in 2% interest and collecting interest. And by the end of 15 years, you're going to have about $523,000. Now, this might sound like a lot of money, but remember our goal is 1 million, right? So you're only slightly above halfway there. But let's say if you take that $2,500 and you invest it in the stock market, and let's say you earn a 10% rate of return for 15 years. Now that amount would almost be a million. So I think I'll put up a picture as to what it looks like and what the final number is because I can't remember the number exactly, but it was $990,000 or something like that. It was almost a million, right? So you would be able to achieve that goal if you invest $2,500 per month at a rate of return of 10% for 15 years. So that just goes to show the power of compound interest. And the same $2,500 a month will get you to completely two different places if you just saved the money and just did nothing with it versus if you actually took some risk and invested in the stock market. Now, I understand that $2,500 a month is probably still a lot of money for a lot of people to invest, right? Like most people can't put away $2,500 a month to invest. Well, then if you push up the rate of return a little bit more, then you can lower your monthly contribution and still achieve fire in 15 years. So I'll put a link down to a compound interest calculator, the one that I use and the one that I just showed the picture of. And you guys can go play around with it and check some numbers and put whatever numbers you want in it, right? So let's say you want to contribute a little bit less, but you think you can make a little bit more rate of return. So you guys can play around with the numbers. But I think in general, if you actually took investing seriously, then you wouldn't have to rely on just purely saving money to achieve financial independence, right? Because unfortunately, newsflash, if you think that you're going to save your way to financial independence, you're probably not going to be able to unless your income is already super high. And if your income is high enough such that you can achieve financial independence just by saving, then you're probably already financially independent, which is kind of like an oxymoron. It's kind of like a dead loop. But anyways, that's what I have to say for number two. Now for criticism number three is I often hear even $1 million is not enough. Right, so this comes off the 4% rule that I mentioned earlier. So remember what the 4% rule is where you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio per year and never run out of principal, right? So for example, if you have $1 million and you can withdraw $40,000 out of it per year without ever running out of money. Now here in Ontario, Canada, $40,000 per year is just about the median individual income. But if you have a family, $40,000 a year might not be enough, especially if you're the sole breadwinner of your family. So people are saying, oh, even if I have $1 million saved up, I won't be able to achieve financial independence because I would only have $40,000 a year worth of income and I have to feed feed family and I have to feed kids. So what I have to say to that is that I think that the 4% rule is actually a quite conservative estimate if you ask me. Now, if you just did any homework, if you just did some research, and if you just put in just a little bit of effort into investing, I think you can, in the long term, average more than 4% per year, even if we encounter a crisis like the one that we're going through right now. And now this requires you to become diligent and actually research companies and put your money into really good companies that will earn you a good rate of return in the long run. But I think that the 4% rule just means that you're just blindly putting your money into a lot of really safe assets like bonds and maybe really high dividend paying stocks and stuff like that. So, if that's the way that you want to play it and you're really risk averse, then sure. But I think if you're willing to take on a little bit more risk, you're actually able to earn more than 4% per year in the long term. And another thing I have to say to that is that the $40,000 a year, the 4% that you get from your $1 million, that's really meant to be a safety net. So let's not assume that you're just gonna make $0 for the rest of your entire life once you get to $1 million. So if you're smart enough to get to $1 million from zero, I would assume that you would at least have some other revenue streams that you can tap into to get to push your income a little higher once you achieve $1 million investment portfolio, right? So let's not assume that once you get to $1 million, then your income is just going to drop to zero and you're just going to lay on the couch and watch Netflix for the rest of your life and do absolutely nothing. So I don't think that that's quite realistic, right? So even if people get $40,000 a year and they're able to just retire and just do nothing, I mean, if you really feel like that's not enough, then you can maybe get like a part-time job on the weekend and just earn like another $20,000 a year. So combined, you would earn like $60,000 a year. So my point is that that income is supposed to be a safety net, right? So I know a lot of people in America, like Andrew Yang, or even here in Canada, are talking about a universal basic income, a UBI. So what a UBI is basically when the government gives you, let's say $1,000 per month by doing absolutely nothing, right? You just have to exist and the government will give you money. And the purpose is that the government wants to ensure that you're not just homeless and you're not starving to death. So if you follow the 4% rule on $1 million, you're going to get about $3,000 a month. So you can kind of think of it as a universal basic income that you give yourself. So instead of relying on the government, you have your investment portfolio and you're just taking $3,000 a month from it, courtesy from yourself. So it establishes a safety net for you to fall back on in case something bad happens. And it's not really meant for you to completely 100% live off of for the rest of your entire life, assuming that you have absolutely zero income for the rest of your entire life, which I think is a really unlikely scenario, right? So yeah, that's what I have to say to that. It's that if you achieve $1 million, maybe $40,000 a year that you withdraw from it is not enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life. But the safety net at that point would be so high for you that even if something like this happens where you get fired from your job, or let's say you run a business and your income stream declines by like 80 to 90%, you won't be nearly as worried as someone who is not financially independent, who has a $0 investment portfolio. So that's what I have to say to that. So I hope that clears out some of the questions that you guys might have about FIRE. And I'll make another video about other criticisms if you guys have any. So if you guys have any other criticisms, please put them down in the comments below and I'll read every single one of them. So this video is getting a little long, so I'll end it here. Be sure to hit the like button if you haven't already, and consider subscribing if you like this series. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, links down in the description as always. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.